A very good afternoon. And amid this corona outbreak, I'm hoping that everyone is keeping safe, healthy, and staying home, and also following the guidelines being given by central government, by state government, and keeping yourself safe. I understand this is the time period when all the sectors are being impacted. We all are in a process where we have been forced to stay in this lockdown, and there are negativities all around. So we thought if we focus on negativities, it will be only negativity. So why not to have a positive impact around us? And we thought let's utilize this time in such a way, in such a manner that we do our own capacity building and learn from various initiatives which are already been happening in the water sector, whether it is technology and whether it is the new upcoming fields. So today we have thought let's bring and let's start a series of webinars for our viewers because we also missed our audience, we missed our speakers, we missed our advertisers, advisors. So today is the first webinar of the series, and we thought there should be a grand start. And we are starting it with none another than Mr. Tyagi, R.S. Tyagi. He had been a member with Delhi Jal Board for 34 years. He has served Delhi Jal Board. He is also one of the key experts of the water segment and had been serving on various committees, advisory committees for the water sector. And as far as the topic is concerned, we thought the topic is such that we all should connect with it. So when we talk about water crisis, there are various views which says that the water crisis prevailing today is not something which is actually there. It is our making. And why I'm saying it is our making? Because there are reports by UNDP and many other researchers and scientific community which say that this is all our making. When I say our making, that means we have technology in place, we have various initiatives by government in place, but where are we lacking? We're lacking at a governance level. We feel there is a need of proper water governance, and that's where we thought of a very important topic, which is integrated water resource management. And we have with us Mr. Tyagi. I hope you will you'll find it very informative, and you'll like the overall webinar. Also, the overall webinar will go for 45 minutes, wherein Mr. Tyagi will be touching upon various important aspects of IWRN. We'll also keep it open for question answer session at the end of the webinar. So the time is short and maybe we'll not be able to take up all the queries. Whatever are your queries, you may please keep typing at the window which is available on in front of your screen. If we are able to answer them during the question answer sessions, it will be great. If not, please feel free to send us an email at info@thewaterdigest.com and we'll make sure your queries are answered. So over to you, Mr. Tyagi. Welcome to you and welcome for this webinar series and welcome all our participants. Please enjoy it and I'm sure you'll find it informative. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anupamaji, for inviting me for this talk and for giving us such a detailed introduction about me. Good morning and welcome to entire team of Water Digest, Ms. Neha, Wasim, and all others, and all the eminent participants also. So I hope under this worldwide critical situation of coronavirus explosion in the entire world, you are staying at home and doing well, safely. I pray to Almighty God for the fast recovery from this biological disaster and wish God that all are recovered from this disaster as early as possible. I must congratulate Water Digest for holding such a webinar on the water subject under such a dangerous situation, keeping all you safe and to keep you updated about the knowledge about the water by choosing such a unique topic. This topic is not actually, it is not a very old topic, and a seminar, an international conference was organized by Ministry of Water Resources in 2nd February 2015 in joint venture with World Bank Groups and Asian Development Bank, in which all the Ministry of Water Resources senior officers, 100 participants from various institutions, from water utilities, from the abroad foreign experts, from the financing institutions team, they all attended this conference and deliberate about the objective of the conference and how to share the experience of all the countries about integrated water resource management and how can be implemented in India and what is the way forward to it. So it will be a very interesting topic which was chosen by the Ministry of Water Resources, and now we are updating on the platform of the Water Digest. It was unfortunate that due to the coronavirus, the award, the event of the award giving by the Water Digest could not be held, and now they have suggested the webinar which I have accepted. So thank you very much, the Water Digest team. Now I'm going to deliver the lecture on the integrated water resource management, that is also called as IWRM. So this topic has been divided into various parts. Just a moment. So this has been split into 6 main components. That is, what is the definition of integrated water resource management and the concept, why it is need of implementation of IWRM, why do we need, and what are the key elements of IWRM, what are the principles, how it can be implemented, and what are the conclusion and the recommendations. So the definition is very clear. It has been defined by the technical group of committee of the Global Water Partnership, GWP, in 1990, that it is a process which promotes the coordinated development and management of water, land and the resources in order to maximize economic and social welfare in an equitable manner without compromising the sustainable of vital ecosystem. This is the underlying statement, that is without compromising the sustainability of the vital ecosystem. Means you can draw the water, you can allocate the water depending on your requirement, on agriculture, on the drinking, or for the industries, but your ecosystem of the stream should not be compromised. That is the baseline of the IWRM. Means all the different uses of water resources are considered together, and water allocation, water management decisions consider the effect on each other. They are able to take account of over the social and economic goals, including the achievement of sustainable development. And this is a participatory decision making. I'm giving to you the example of the water allocation, which was done in May 1993 among the basin states for allocation of the river Yamuna. So there were 5 basin states, these are basin states which were Uttarakhand, which is now Uttarakhand. Previously it was UP, Haryana, Delhi, Rajasthan, and Himachal Pradesh. So all the states were the stakeholders for allocation of the Yamuna water, and it was a participatory approach in allocation of the river, depending on the requirement on the agriculture for the particular states, for the drinking needs, and for the industrial need of the water supply. So this was a participatory approach which was taken in May 1993 when this accord was signed among the basin states. And all of you know what are the importance of the water, because these are the driving force. Without knowing the importance of water, what are the challenges in the water, you cannot draw your demand of the water resource for your particular states. What is a key natural resource for the human supply? Water plays a vital role in sanitation of our rural and the urban communities. What is also an important economic resource is it also necessary for all forms of agriculture and most of the industrial production processes. Water also provides a wide range of ecosystem and environmental services. It is essential for assimilation of pollution caused through the industrial effluents and the domestic sewage. And there are various uses of water which a state has its own different priorities. It doesn't mean that Delhi has the priority of the agriculture. It has the priority of drinking need. If versus the Haryana has the priority over the irrigation priority over the drinking need, and some other states are having the industrial needs. So these are various uses of water on which basis this allocation is to be made. These are some the uses of the water are some consumptive nature and then some are the non-consumptive nature, like hydropower, navigation, recreation, fisheries, and the environment, that is wildlife, nature conservation. These are the non-consumptive use, means water is not used for their consumption. Or it is used very partly, but there are some consumptive use of the water. It has a different definition that water is used in one form or the other, and it is transformed into the other form, like rain-fed agriculture, irrigation, domestic use in urban centers and the rural areas, livestock, industrial and commercial uses, institutions like schools, hospitals, government hospitals, buildings, sports facilities, etc. Waste and waste management disposal, cooling. So these are some uses of water which we all know. And why it is required? Why integrated water resource management is required for the best resource management? This is another form of the water governance also. Water is a scarce commodity. When I say the scarce and commodity, there are two words. One is the scarce, another is the commodity. The scarce means the 97% of the water is in ocean which cannot be utilized, or utilized it is very expensive to utilize for the drinking purpose, and the remaining 3% is stored in the form of frozen glaciers, 22% in ground, and 1% what you see in the lakes, rivers, and the streams. So 1% is the hardly available resource which is available for allocation among the states. If you see the worldwide distribution of water, it is very surprising. The ocean accommodates around 13.7 million into 1,000 cubic kilometer cubic of water. That is 94% of the 94.2% of the total available water. Groundwater, which is in form of the fresh and saline, it is 60,000 into 1,000 cubic kilometer. That is 4.1% of the total available. Glaciers 1.65%. Lakes and reservoir it is hardly 0.019%. Soil moisture it is 0.006%. Atmospheric water it is hardly 0.001%, and river water is 0.001%. So you can say that the how water available in the rivers and the lakes is very minimum, very minimum. You cannot have the luxury of abundance of water. And you can see from this scenario that at the time of independence, per capita availability of fresh water was 6,008 cubic meter per year. And in 1997, it came down to 22,000 cubic meter per annum. So as the population increased, the per capita availability also decreased because it is a denominator. The situation is already critical in 6 out of the 20 major river basins, with per capita freshwater availability is going below 1,000 cubic meter per annum. It is from the World Bank report 1998, and it is now going to worse also. Today, more than 2 billion people are affected by the water shortages. Over 40 countries, 263 river basins are shared by 2 or more major basin nations. 2 million tons per day. We are further deteriorated our available resources. What is resource available with us? That is in form of the river and the groundwater. But what we are doing for them? We are deteriorating the further resources by dumping the solid waste, human waste, which is deposited in the water, and we are contaminating our water resources. Half of the population of the developing world are exposed to the polluted source of water, that increases the disease incidences. Actually, why this problem have come up, that we are deteriorating the quality of our available water resources, that every state, every utility or any political leader gives the least priority on the waste management. We give the priority to the water supply. We give the priority to the availability of water, but not to the sewage disposal, not to the waste management. As we see that in metropolitan cities, around 51% of the sewage generated is collected and treated. In class 1 cities, the situation is very pathetic. Only 32% sewage is collected and treated and disposed of. And in class 2 cities, it is hardly 8% of sewage is collected and treated and disposed safely. And with the available capacity of the treatment capacity of the sewage, hardly 10% of the sewage treatment plant capacity is performing good. 36% are satisfactory, 33% are poor, and 21% are very poor. So if we see this situation, then the treatment of the and disposal of the sewage is not safe. It cannot be safe. So we are deteriorating our water resources, which is available in the surface water in the stream. These are some driving forces for determining the allocation of raw water resources for our city, for our states, that we have to keep in mind the challenges in urban water sector, what we are facing. And according to these challenges, we have to draw the demand of the water supply in different sectors. These challenges are water resources, fast urbanization and unplanned growth, industrialization and poor enforcement of environment, enforcement of law, institutional challenge, political, water management, change in the seasonal and the regional water demand, the technological challenges, poor data collection and the data management, and the climate change. If we deliberate on each challenge, this surface water, which is very prone to the pollution, that is river, lakes, and ponds, the fast-growing population has increased the water demand, resulting into water availability and the pollution in the water bodies due to mishandling of the sewage. If we talk about the major sources of water, that is dams and reservoirs on the upstream area of the rivers, we are facing the protest of environmentalists and the social justice activists. We are facing the uprooting of greens and the habitations, imbalance in ecology, and the redischarge, water recharge, and the sanitation in these storages. And the another area of challenge is the non-availability of funds for large water projects. Around 400 big and small dam projects in India held up due to lack of the proper funds or opposition from the environmental lobbies. If we talk about the groundwater, overexploitation and absence of recharge of the water resulted into the depletion of water table and pollution of water due to the infiltration of the contaminations, lowering down water table, and increase the power cost, which has also increased the power cost and reinstallation of the tube wells. You will be surprised to know that out of 4,400 tube wells which has been bored by the Delhi Jal Board are being replaced and reinstalled around every year at the rate of around 500 to 1,000 tube wells per year. So due to the lowering down of the water table, basically in south and southeast, Delhi Jal Board is replacing 500 to 1,000 tube wells every year. They are lowering down or they are reinstalling the tube wells. So you can imagine the cost incurred in the installation or in exploitation of the water, groundwater, by if the water table is lowered. The next challenge is the fast urbanization and unplanned growth. The rise in demand for the water for a given rise in the population will be much higher than what will occur if the population grows by the same magnitude in the rural areas. The fast urbanization has also shrunk the agricultural land and overstressed the available resources and caused the pollution in the available resource due to the poor handling of the waste. I have already mentioned in my previous slides. In many cities, the migrants settle illegally for earning their livelihoods due to the failure of implementing the comprehensive development plan by the Delhi government. You can see the example of Delhi itself, that more than 1600 illegal colonies have cropped up in the agricultural land. And that why these have been cropped up, because it is the failure of the implementing agencies in making available them the proper housing, affordable housing and the low cost housing to them. So they choose to go for the construction of low cost in the agricultural land, which is available, and there was no enforcement of law and any urban planning was there by the developing agencies. So agencies plan water and the sewer. What water utility will do? Because you have to provide the basic amenities to them who have been cropped up illegally or legally. But we planned the water supply and the sewage system for the plant city. We are not expecting that a huge quantity of illegal colonies will settle down around the plant colonies. So the facilities which have been provided in the existing urban plant areas, they were under the overstressed, and because these facilities were shared by the illegal settlement also. The big challenge is also industrialization, the poor enforcement of law and the environment of law. Increased human activities directly contaminate the groundwater pollution of the groundwater due to indiscriminate disposal of the industrial effluent and multiple waste in the water bodies is a major concern. Many cities and the industrial cluster in India. And if anybody tries to enforce the environment law, these regulatory authority are challenged in the court of law, and the cases are pending for the long time, and they continue to pollute the available resources. Small industries do not have finance to install the ETPs because they cannot afford to install ETPs, so their industrial effluent goes to the drains and ultimately goes to the sewage, or ultimately and finally to the available resources like ponds and the reservoirs. And some due to some fear of the government enforcement, they try to show that their industries they're not discharging the waste. So what do they do? They inject the industrial effluent directly into the ground through the borewell. So this is very unpleasant and that very dangerous, that our groundwater are being polluted, and that this cannot be replenished over 100 years or more than 500 years, because you are polluting your groundwater, which cannot be diluted by any means. So intensive use of chemical fertilizers in farms and indiscriminate disposal of human and animal waste on the land result in the leaching of their residual nitrates and the potassium, causing high nitrate concentration in the groundwater. So these are some sources which are polluting the groundwater. We are reducing the available resources in the groundwater also, apart from the surface water. Excessive withdrawal of the groundwater from the coastal aquifer has led to introduction of the seawater in the coastal aquifers. So and similar things happens if you overdraw the water from the ground near the polluted source. The best example is the river water, the Yamuna River, which is the stretch available between the Wazirabad and the Okhla barrage. It is most polluted. So the water table around this stretch is of course potable, but if you overdraw the water, the polluted water which is flowing in the river will start introducing into the available groundwater, and that will pollute. So that is why most of the rainy wells and the tube wells in the floodplain area over this stretch, have been closed down to avoid the over extraction of the water. And this is another phase of the industrial challenge, that India's rapidly urbanizing and industrializing economy is the base to measure new water demand, while options for supply augmentation few. Recent projection indicates that India's water demand will rise uh, the twice will be twice the available supply by 2030. Means whatever you are have the available resources, the water demand will be double of that resources. So in response to the effective surface of the management, there has been a rapid and uncontrolled development of the groundwater resource across India, and many groundwater systems are now depleted and polluted. In the face of the growing crisis in the 12th five-year plan of the Government of India calls for a paradigm shift in the water resource management and outlines several necessary elements for reform process, including strengthening of the river basin management and use of recycled water instead of the filtered water, or using the surface water. So there are certain provisions made in the 5-year plan, 12th five-year plan, to have a paradigm shift for using the basin water for the industrial use. So these are some institutional challenges. The institution challenges. So these are some. Uh, these are the 5 core management needs, that is the effective in responding to the local water scarcity problem. Then competence of the evolve comprehensive water management approaches, address regional problems, ability to design and management system to alter social system effective water use, capacity to ensure equitable and sustainable water resources use, and ability to implement water allocation plan effectively and resolve conflicts. And the another institutional challenge is the multiplicity of the authority. The allocation of the water is with other authorities, the monitoring is with the another authorities, and the disposal, the dispute redressal method is with another authorities. So these are some multiplicity of authorities which has hampered this process of resolution. And the priority of needs, irrigation, which is the priority. So the water resources has Ministry of Water Resources has fixed the priorities. The drinking water is the priority need, but some states say that no, our priority is the agriculture. Some states say that no, our priority is the industrial. But drinking priority is the priority which is considered first. Water tariff to be decided by the water regulator and not by the politicians. The water policies means without having water policies by the states, because national water policies were launched in 2012, but only few states has framed their water policies. So without having the water policies and the water master plan, how will you account for the requirement of the water supply for your states? So for calculating the precise demand of the water supply, you have to have with your water policies in hand water master plan, which is not available with every states, and setting up the water norms. Water has always been at the center of the political agenda. You can see that every state or every political party fight their elections on the water and electricity. So they use it as a tool for creating the vote bank. Therefore, policies, laws, regulation, legislative institutions that would restrict or redefine the communities in accessing the water is bound to become a proper sensitive issue. The forced policy for doing water free for the vote banks. So these are some political challenges which we have to face. The areas are foregone. If you are not charging the areas, then what is will be the implications? Means you will not have the revenue to incur the expenditure on creating the new infrastructure. You cannot maintain your infrastructure in the proper manner. And of course, consumers have the tendency to accumulate the bills because the political party will forego your areas in the future. So they start not paying the bills. So water being the essential for the life, one cannot disconnect the water connection, even if consumers are at fault. The politician also encourage their voters to install water connection illegally. If you are not taking the legal water connection, then you go ahead with the illegal water connection. You cannot, nobody can disconnect their water because it is considered to be a basic need for the human being. Unwarranted interference of the politician day-to-day activities. Land for creating water infrastructure are given last priorities. The first priority is given to the schools, to the hospitals, and the other infrastructures. But when we come to the to create the water infrastructure in any colony, the lands are not available for them. The water management in India, the water sector is being maintained the conventional practices, where the best management practices can be adopted for converting intermittent supply into 24/7. We can reduce the non-revenue water, which is around 50%, and globally it should be 15%. We can reduce the power consumption by using the latest technology, latest equipment, water efficient fixtures. We can increase the collection efficiency, which we are not doing. We can improve the water quality at the doorstep, which we are getting the contaminated water. Incentive and accountability, that both should be hand to hand for the proper management and encourage community participation. The big challenge also is in the change in the seasonal and the regional water demand. The water demands are set by the CPHU on the basis of an average. That for the metro city it should be 150 LPCD, for class 1 and 2 city it should be 135 LPCD with 15% buffer for the NRW. But it varies. The water supply demand varies from one place to another place depending on the weather and affordability of the consumers. The water demand is increased in manifold in the summers, and it also varies from region to region. In Jammu and Srinagar, the demand cannot be same as the water demand in the Tamil Nadu and the south part of the India. Even in the same state or in the same district, the pattern of water use is different from high gentry to the poor class. In Delhi, if you see the example, the water available in civil lines and the NDMC area is as high as 300 LPCD. And if you go to the slum areas, it is hardly 30 to 40 LPCD. And somewhere it is hardly 20 LPCD, which is the areas which are the water stressed and water is supplied through the tube wells or the water tankers. And within the same country, water demand varies from place to another place. As I mentioned that the water supply demand in the Srinagar cannot be same as the Tamil Nadu. The technological demand, this is another area of the challenge, that what we are progressing with the technological invention is not at the pace what we do need at the ground. Water utilities are not adapted to the latest technology also, because there are so many latest technology available globally, by virtue of which we can do the construction activities fast, we can manage the water supply in very efficient manner, but we are not adapting this because of the fear in the mind of the implementing authorities, because we don't have the technical specifications of those technology, we don't have the reasonability of the rates which cannot be authenticated, and even some water utilities who have dared to adopt these latest technologies are booked by the CBI or any other third party agencies for adopting those technologies, and they are facing the consequences. So that is the fear in the mind of the officers, that the new technology should not be adopted because they don't know about their technical specification and the reasonability of the rates, at what rate these should be awarded. And of course, another angle is that there's some proven technology in other countries may not be successful in India due to the various constraints. And of course, there is a mental block in handing over the water management in the private hand. The best example in the Lijal board, when in 2004 World Bank tried to implement the best management practices in South Delhi. So some water activists came forward and then opposed those implementation of the project in the South Delhi. Ultimately, that project was kept in self, and it could not happen at the later stages. The another area of the challenge is the poor data collection and the data management. One of the biggest challenges facing the water management sector in the country is non-availability of the adequate and the authenticated data which is needed for the water budgeting, allocation planning, and the management decision making. The reliable estimate for the water supply and the demand are one of the core needs for the water management. The methodology adopted for recharge estimation has a weak scientific basis and has the estimate are the questionable. I can quote the example of Central Groundwater Board. They should not take it otherwise, because in one of the meeting, the question was raised from the scientist representing the Central Water Ground Board, that how do you calculate the quantity of water which is extracted from the ground in South Delhi or Southwest area, or from the entire Delhi. So he replied that this we don't measure the quantity of water, we have the crude method. Means we know what is the quantity of water supply being done by the Delhi Jal Board, and what is the requirement of the per capita for the public. So we multiply the water requirement into the population and reduce the quantity which is available by the Delhi Jal Board for that area. So that means we assume that the balance quantity is exploited from the ground. So that is the crude method. You cannot say that this data can be used in decision making for the allocation of the water supply. And as regards surface water, the most crucial data is dependent on the runoff. For the scientific estimation of the dependable runoff, adequate data on the historical rainfall and the stream flows are essential, which is hardly available in some of the basins. But for the rest, the data are available for a limited number of gauging stations and for the short horizons. Water use rates are important for analyzing or determining the management intervention, but no data are compiled. Officials cannot be compiled. So use of water in the different sectors, such as the capita water use in municipal water used by livestock. So we don't consider the data, the requirement of the water which is being used by the livestock, crop water use, and what kind of crop we are growing, and what kind of industries we are having in the state, in that area, and what is the quantity of water to be used for those industries, for the crops pattern. And so this data is not available. What are the climate change? This has aggravated the all other challenges, because increase in the average temperatures, glaciers are melting at the fast rates. So what we are calculating that this water will be available in the surface water has increased. Sometimes it is not there. We don't have the data, proper data. Erratic rainfall pattern has caused non-uniform distribution of the surface and the groundwater, because you might have seen that there is a cloud burst. So that means the high intensity of the rains for the short duration has caused all the empirical formula, has failed all the empirical formulas. So high temperature causes also high water demand. When there is a high temperature, you see that in the May or June, the demand increase very substantially. So these are some climatic change which has hampered, which has overstress, and which has caused the great difficulty in allocation of the water resources. When we come to the key elements of the IWRM, there are the four key elements basically. there should be an enabling environment of suitable policies, strategies, and legislation for sustainable water resources development and the management. The second one is the institutional arrangement with the capacity to enable the policies, strategies, and legislation to be operationalized. Management instruments required for these institutions to be effective, and the last one is the data and tools to provide the knowledge and information, the evidence-based management. So what is the enabling environment? The Interstate River Basin Dispute Act 1956 was passed by the Government of India to resolve, to redress the water disputes that would arise in the use, control, and distribution of the water in the interstate rivers. Although several river boards have been established using this legislation, but these have largely focused on citing the specific development projects or a single water management such as flooding. So no river basin organization exists in India with an mandate and resource for the comprehensive planning, the mandate of the water resources at the basin scale. So Government of India now thereafter drafted a basin management act that would require states to adopt cooperative, integrated, and basin scale approach to the water resource planning and management through establishing of the appropriately empowered basin authorities for regulation and development of the interstate basins. Means the enabling water means is that I can quote the example of of the distribution allocation of water among the 5 basin states of the river Yamuna. Now, the project of Renukaji Dam was initiated by the Government of India. Initially, it was not a national project. It was to be the cost of the entire project was to be shared by Delhi and Himachal Pradesh, which were the beneficiary states. So, and there was a understanding between the Himachal Pradesh and Delhi that the entire electricity which will be generated from this dam will be taken away by the Himachal Pradesh, and the water available from this storage will be given to the Delhi for their drinking need. So that was the mutual understanding. But thereafter, all these states, with the change in the government, started talking about demanding their share also. Rajasthan started demanding its share. Then Haryana asked the share for their agriculture need. So the proper consensus could not be made among these basin states. So enabling environment gives you the power to, or give the consent to allocate the water judiciously among the states with the participatory approach, which could not be happen. So there should be enabling environment if you are going to implement the IWRM. Now there is the institution and the governance to strengthen adoption of a river basin management approach. It is important to build a cooperative approach that builds an understanding of each river basin based on a culture of open of the slums data and the information and demonstration of the benefits of the allocation to the water users. The key benefits should include clarity of the water uses, supply reliability, and opportunity for the better risk management for both basin and the local scale. The greater regulation and enforcement is required once the rules of the game are clearly established and the system-wide benefits are well understood. The regulation enforcement help ensure equity and prevent inequitable individual to and at the expense of the users, at the expense of the environment. And these are the data and tools that you should have the information, proper information for deciding the allocation of the water. You should have the proper tools to decide transparently the allocation, and the National Water Policy 2004 calls about the what are the requirement for the, and how to show it on the GIS platform, which will indicates the hydrological data, which should be in the public domain. And that should be, and I think in response to this policy direction, Ministry of Water Resources, which has been now Jal Shakti, and the Indian Space Research Organization have already executed the Indian Water Resource Information System, and which is available to the public domain. These are some in principle of the IWRM. These are the three E's: equity, ecological integrity, and efficiency. What do you mean by the equality? What is basic needs? So every it should be accessible to the everyone, irrespective of their status, irrespective of their gender, equality. And another is the ecological integrity. Water resources can only persist in a natural environment capable of regenerating water for the sufficient quantity. Only sustainable water use can be allowed such that the future generation will be able to use it in a similar ways as we have, this generation has. So efficiency, water is a scarce resource, as I already described, that it should be priced very logically. Means once it is available in the natural ponds, then it is a natural resources. But when it is transformed, it is converted into the drinking purpose or in any use, then it becomes a commodity. So pricing should be so logically that you are able to create the infrastructure, and you can maintain, you can operate and maintain the infrastructure which has been created, and it should not jeopardize the equality principle also. So these are how it is can be implemented. There are 10 components for this implementation. One is the this was derived from the UN World Water Development Report, that is report 3. One is the political will and the commitment. The political will at all the levels is capable to unite. It should unite all the stakeholders and move the process forward. So if any requirement is needed in the legal framework or the institutional structure, that should happen, and there should not be conflict between the stakeholders. And if it is needed, then the outside interference, that is maybe water regulator, that is away from the political will, that can interfere in implementation of the Indian integrated water resource management. The basin management plan and the clear vision. The water resource development coordinated among various sectors users is facilitated by the preparation of a master plan that reflects the individual sector plan and offer the most effective and efficient utilization of the resources. The third one is the participation and coordination mechanism fostered with information sharing and the exchange. The identification of the stakeholder can be facilitated through interviews and meetings. The stakeholders' involvement can be defined appropriately by the local conditions, improved gradually, initial sharing of the basin-wide data and information, and further sharing of the specific information will assist the self-sustaining system. The capacity development and the training priorities should be expressed at all the levels, including that which decentralized local government participants who may be advertising the impacted and socially demarginalized may be stimulated and participate within the consensus building strategy. There should be well-defined, flexible and enforceable legal framework that if it is necessary to assemble the review the full national existing law and the regulations which are applied to the water related activities and determine how to go about the legislating adapts or can be better adaptability. Water allocation plans, as the water is shared resources, water river should be flexible in terms of the allocation in order to accommodate changes. Means if it is very old one, then you can have the power to change the legislation if it is required. Preparing a master plan that reflects the individual sectoral plan, facilitate the coordination among various sectors, advocate the most appropriate utilization of the basin resources. There should be adequate investment, financial stability, and sustainability in recovery. So you should have the various resources for the financing the any project. Like various international financing agencies can be utilized, like JICA, like ADB, the World Bank. These can be utilized for your implementation of this integrated water management. You can use the public resources. You can use the user charges and the taxes. You can utilize the donor funds. You can use the various schemes of the central government. And there should be good knowledge of the natural resources present in the basin. Adequate knowledge and information on the water resources inventory and the human resources of the basin is desirable, which includes scientific, and the water resource manager can help in maintaining and accrue the sound knowledge of the natural resources. The comprehensive monitoring and the evaluation should also be there for ensuring that the current management of the water resources is properly implemented. And there should be equal focus on the water waste management to preserve the water resources for the future generation. So these are some of the basic components for the implementation. And what is the conclusion from the entire integrated water management, from its concept, from the challenges, from the implementation, and what are the key elements? That in order to ensure the sustainable water resources for the next generation in the manner we have, the economical and the social development and growth implementation of our development is needed in a coordinated manner in consultation with the stakeholders, without having the gender inequality and without compromising the sustainability of the vehicle ecosystem, which is the basic element of the IWRM, that your ecosystem should not be compromised with. In order to have the better management of the water resources in the domestic agriculture industries and environment needs, and overcome the current problem in the water sharing due to the increased water stress, River Board Act, which was constituted in 1956, should be revisited and revised in the current scenario, because it was that the scenario in that era, that in 1956, was different from the current scenario. So it should be revisited and can be revised. And it was also the recommendation of the international conference, which was held by the Ministry of Water Resources in 2015 also. This recommendation was also given by the similar conference, that it would be expedient in the public interest that the government takes, the central government takes under its control the regulation and development of interstate rivers and the river valleys to extent required, and to ensure the optimum water management. So these are some conclusion and the recommendations which have been derived from that conference, which is needed based on the basis of the principle of the IWRM, and which are the basic elements of the IWRM. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity for delivering this unique subject. Thank you so much.
Sir, I guess there are a couple of questions now from our readers, from our viewers, and they'll be shared with you shortly. So, if the time permits and if you can take a few questions, please do that, sir.
So I have captured two questions which are very relevant and now which are very important. One is the how can we convert intermittent supply into the 24/7 supply, and the second one, which is the hot topic of today, that is COVID impact on the water. So one question is that how can we convert intermittent supply into the 24/7 supply? Actually, this is covered in the best management practices, and worldwide this practice is being adopted to convert intermittent supply into the 24/7 supply. Actually, what we are doing now in Delhi or in any other states, that we know that we have the scarcity of water. So what we are doing, that we are supplying water of the entire day, of the entire 24-hour demand, into two different timings, means 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. So we think that due to shorten the period of supply, we are going to reduce the water demand. Means we are preventing the water from the losses, but it is not happening. Actually, what is the tendency of the consumers, that when there is an intermittent supply, they try to store the water in their containers for using for the next supply. So when the next supply is, because they are not certain whether the next supply will be there or not, so they try to store the water in the containers, and when the next supply comes, they throw it as it is a old one. So it means we are wasting the water. So if I am sure that I will be available the water supply when I will open my tap, then I will not store any even a drop of water. So what do I do? Hello, hello. So what do I do then? I will not store my water in the container. So the concept of converting intermittent supply to the 24/7 supply is that to ensure that the water supply is available 24/7 in the Delhi Jal Board or in any in the distribution lines. Means whenever you open the tap, you should have the water supply. So there is a different pattern of use during the 24-hour supply. If you see the pattern, in the morning you have the maximum water supply. In the evening you have the maximum water supply also, because you have the more consumption in the evening also. But during night hours there is no requirement of the water supply. Even during the between 11 a.m. to say 6 p.m. there is no much requirement of the water supply. So what we do, that we select the area in a smaller amount, that is called a district meter areas. We do the water audit of that area, that how much water supply is being given to that area. We fix the bulk water meter to that area. Then we conduct the survey and to know what individual are using the water, how much quantity is being used. So we see how much water is being lost in that supply period. So to reduce that loss, we then find out what are the leakages. Then we plug the leakages. So then after plugging the leakages, we pump the water, we select the pump in such a manner that they varies the quantity and the quality, they varies the quantity of the water according to the demand in the area. Means during the peak demand, the water supply is more, and during the less demand, the water supply is less. So in that manner, we do the 24/7 supply instead of the intermittent supply. But but in this condition, when we ensure the 24/7 supply, our leakages should be minimum. So we should focus on the minimum water supply. We should ensure that minimum water should go waste. So that is the main focus area of plugging the leakage is in 24/7 supply mechanisms. So in that manner, we convert 24/7 supply, we convert intermittent supply into the 24/7 supply. So this is the answer to the first question. The second question is, which is very important, that what is the impact, COVID impact on the water? It is very important question. Actually, what some certain percentage of the population is affected by the corona. You have the data on your TV screen that this much population is affected, this much has been died, this much has been recovered from the corona. Actually, there are contamination of the surface water, maybe groundwater, maybe the surface water. Means we are disposing the medicines which is being disposed by the human being which is affected by the corona, and it is going to the water stream. So you cannot say that the virus has already been, because the mortality of the virus I cannot comment upon that after, if it is gone with the excreta of the human excreta, it will be died or not. I cannot say. But is some percentage of corona virus has gone to the stream, and it is again lifted for the human use, for human consumption. It is going to be affected at later stage. So we have to be very cautious about disposal of the medicines, disposal of the human excreta, disposal of PPE kit, disposal of the samples which have been taken by the labs, and all the related equipments which are being destroyed by the hospitals. That should be the special attention should be taken care of, that this should not go to the our water streams. So this is very important, that we should be very cautious about disposal of these equipment which are affected by the coronavirus. If we are little bit reluctant, this is going to be another disaster in form of the water disaster, which will be using for our drinking purposes. So thank you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful having you, and I'm sure the participants found it informative.